I once used the phrase denigrate while on stage, and nobody seemed to mind. The title is The Newharts, the Rickles' best friends. My dad passed away, but I have wonderful memories of watching your shows with him. Several people have said to me, that is the best that it gets. There seems to be some misunderstanding, in my opinion, between comedy and offensive humor. However, if you give someone else the identical components, he may never say anything hilarious. I believe the environment and family history are to blame. Thus, I believe there is a connection between marital longevity and laughing. It is our responsibility to ridicule the world as it is. I own a house in Beverly Hills thanks to my stutter, and I'm not going to mess with it anymore. The stillness did not frighten him. Adulthood isn't all that pleasant, so don't hurry into it. That is rather unfortunate. As I turn to face the man standing next to me in the rear, I make a witty comment that makes him chuckle. When I first began in 1960, I had the impression that it would only last a few years. Distinguishing between persons who are chatting on their mobile phone and schizophrenia is becoming more difficult. I have never engaged in political criticism. His environment is an intimidating, hostile place all the time. I've always sort of avoided endorsements because of this. If my stutter goes away, however, I'm simply another somewhat entertaining accountant. I feel that it's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish between persons who are chatting on their mobile phone and schizophrenia since the invention of cell phones, particularly with the little microphone that is attached to the phone itself. To those who just know Don by reputation, I realize it may seem unusual, but he needs a buddy. Act not like you're some kind of celebrity. They'll give you a smack. After 2.5 years of employment in accounting, I decided to give comedy a go as I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in that field. There is no sense of humor in the schizophrenia. We were seen as ill. If you let it, humor may be a weapon. A group of men would be observing the class clown in a circle. When I first began out, Shelley Berman, Jonathan Winters, Lenny Bruce, Mort Saul, and myself were included in an article published in Time magazine about what they termed the sick comics. I still get uncomfortable passing people who seem to be talking to themselves. It enables us to take a step back, process the situation, and then move on. I believe that in a marriage, humor helps you get over the difficult times. Without a doubt, the boldest comic I have ever seen at work was Jack Benny. The left part of my brain was thus fast-forwarding, while I performed to check whether I would be using any more large words. In a movie starring Jose Ferrer and Rosemary Clooney, the couple was wearing matching pajamas when they went to bed. When they woke up the next morning, he was wearing the striped pajamas, and she was wearing the polka dot ones, which was deemed provocative at the time. Having a sense of humor is your only chance of survival. It has taken 74 years of success for me to be able to achieve that. Dick Martin was incapable of telling you a joke, even if you placed a pistol to his forehead. However, I don't. You should, in my opinion, remain a kid for as long as possible. To be honest, I was much too realistic to think of myself as a comedian. Laughing separates us. Although I don't like country music, my intention is not to disparage people who do. Laughter, in my opinion, is a key component of a happy marriage. Don gave me a doormat to put just outside my front door as a reminder to make sure I remember. The number of holy cows in existence today is unknown to me. As a comedian, I may have mixed feelings about a candidate. I wasn't overtly visible. I didn't feel entitled to start. It must be true if the New York Times says so. Furthermore, to those who like country music, disparage signifies put down. And what did he say? Asks the person standing next to him. We were given a glimpse into Mississippian life at the turn of the century by Mark Twain. He would narrate the narrative for as long as it required. It is possible that you think about it often if you are in pain, aching, or have arthritis. I have no idea what qualities define a comic. The issue about it, in my opinion, is that growing up in Chicago, there's this thing called putting on airs. You just learn to avoid being pretentious. Age is not something I consider too much. I don't plan to retire. I can't fathom giving up stand-up comedy. During JFK's campaign, I was quite political. In a sense, every comic is an anarchist. I had no idea it would go on for 42. My best buddy is Don Rickles. I mean, they don't have to vote for the guy I support just because they like my comedic style. I've been instructed to execute at a faster pace. That's my starting point and my final destination. I believe that there is a small, infantile portion of comedians. Consider the lengthy and prosperous marriages of Don Rickles, George Burns, and Jack Benny. The class clown wasn't me. That longevity gives me a tremendous deal of happiness. You're out on the end of the plank after performing the drum roll and the cymbal clash. Unlike jokes, we were working with vignettes. Laugh tracks bother me. As soon as I hear one, I switch to a different station. I'm not sure whether I possessed the self-control required to perform in a Broadway show. Nowhere is worth going. The choice to work cleanly was made. Some females are just not cut out for comedy. It's too manipulative. Hilarious is funny. Patricia Heaton was amazing, in my opinion. I never became a certified public accountant since I couldn't pass the exam that was required to become one. I never had a certification as a CPA. If you approach the truth too closely, you can lose your sense of humor. Comedians who don't operate that way don't bother me in the slightest. Buddy Hackett, the comedian, introduced me to her. Every comic in the world has experienced a bomb. I knew Richard Pryor was going to be a big comedic star from the moment I heard him. There is, to some extent, still. I chose not to. Since you're always on the lookout, comedians never really take a vacation. My habits reflect my innate perspective on the universe. After putting us up on a blind date, we were married. I don't have a pile of screenplays that studios beg me to look at when I come home, asking whether Bob has seen theirs yet. I was imitating every great comic I had ever seen when I first began. You can only learn how to accomplish it in that manner. As a child, I used to make people laugh, but that's not how you earn a livelihood. My degree was in accountancy. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, comedy underwent a radical transformation. I adored Everybody Loves Raymond, due of my fondness for Ray and the excellent script and casting. I am aware that some performers find it fascinating. That antenna is outside all the time. In the early 70s, there was a tendency to think twice. I was terrified the first time I stood in front of an audience, and I remained that way for another 4 or 5 years. When trying to pull a joke, you're on your own if it fails. I then found my own voice. Hyenas are not really laughing, despite how they may sound. Stuttering is not the same as stammering. It's simply how I like to work. Funny is hilarious. Even if my favorite comic, and I have very different styles of humor. Obviously, my choice of employment had an impact since it kept me from meeting Jenny, my wife. My children, grandkids, and the durability of my marriage are the things I'm most proud of. I'm very receptive to newcomers. Each and every comic I ever watched in work had an impact on me. You truly don't have much if you don't have that. You do a clean concert, and when it's all over, both you and the audience have had a good time without needing to use shock tactics. We had more social awareness. Those who have a good sense of humor are usually less narcissistic and more realistic in their outlook on life. They also tend to be more modest when things go well and less dejected when things are tough. Most of us who stutter consider ourselves to be quite intelligent. While some stammerers stumble over full sentences, others struggle with letters. I was astonished by Richard Pryor's hysterical introduction to the world of the inner city and metropolitan areas. Broadway plays are the only thing I have never done.